G'day from Australia. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from which I'm broadcasting. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Ashley Davis. Welcome to my coding live stream. I'm continuing the development of my Kanban board extension for Visual Studio Code. In the last session, I started doing some refactoring for this project, and today I'm going to continue with that. I'm also going to choose a nice font and integrate it into the React Web UI for the Kanban board. And finally, I'm hoping to fit in some defensive testing where I actively try and break my code to make sure that it can handle graceful failures. I mean, I know it can't handle unexpected failures gracefully, and that's why I want to test it and find out what exactly happens. As I'm working, I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is AshleyDavis75. So as usual, I'll just start with a quick demonstration of where we're at. So I'm in Visual Studio Code here. I've got the Kanban board running in an extension. It is actually visualizing what's in this markdown file here, this todo.md. So this is the todo.md format. And I can do a few things here, like I can change the name of a lane here. And you can see that it's changed the name of the lane in the markdown over here. I can also add new lanes. You can see that it's over here on the left that it's added a blah lane. I can add new cards. You can see that it's added the new card in the new task into the to-do list over here on the left. There's a few things missing still, a few features missing. Like I can't, when I move, if I can move it, when I move a lane, when I move a card, that doesn't update the markdown yet, but that is coming very soon. I'm not worried too much about features today. What I'm doing today is continuing on with the refactoring, and actually I want to get a nicer font in because I'm not this font that's the default font in React Trello. So this is based on a project called React Trello, which you can find on GitHub. You can find the package for it on npm. I'm not too happy with the default font, and I've already got another font lined up. So let's do that first. But before we get into it, as usual, I want to start my coding just by running my tests. So I'm just running npm test. This is running jest, which is configured in the package.json file for this Node.js project. I just want to make sure all my tests are running. If you remember last week, I had basically in my refactoring, I'd broken most of the tests. And I didn't really have time in that live stream session to go through and fix them all. But I did show you in that last session, which you can find on YouTube, by the way. I'll show you that in a moment. I did show you how to fix the first test, but what I did between live streams is I went through all the other tests and I fixed them, just following that same recipe. I'll just show you where you can find the code to start with. Should have done that already. Okay, so on my GitHub, Ashley Davis, look up Taskboard VS Code extension. You can find the code here. You can browse the code. There's a bit of a README with some instructions on how to get started if you want to run this code for yourself. And I encourage people to try and get into this and, come up here, click on fork, be the first person to fork this code repository and start making changes to it. It's going to need other contributors by me to be, instead of me to be successful. Also come in and make sure you put a star on it. That'll make sure that this project gets noticed by other people. If you want to catch up on the previous live streams I've done for this project, please have a look at the Data Wrangler on YouTube. That's my YouTube channel. So go to youtube.com, the Data Wrangler. If you go to, there's heaps of videos on here. Obviously, if you want to kind of see what other stuff that I've done, there's heaps on there. But if you go to playlists, and under playlists, choose Coding Livestream Taskboard. Oops. That was the first one.
G'day from Australia.
Let's get rid of that. If you click on View Full Playlist here, you're going to see all of them. So we're actually up to episode 12 today. So I can't believe we're 12 episodes into this live stream, and we're close to finishing. We're close to getting this Visual Studio Code extension that I'm developing. We're close to getting that on the Visual Studio Code marketplace. So that's going to be a really exciting day. I've run my tests, so all my tests are passing. You can go and have a look. If you go and have a look in the GitHub project, here you can see commits. If you want to catch up on what I've done between live streams, go to commits, click on that. I don't think I've pushed my latest changes. Let's just make sure that that's gone through. So I'm just, oh no, it has. So that's everything. When was my last live stream? On the 5th. Maybe I've got some code still checked out. No, that's really weird. This is source tree, so I'm just looking at the history of the project in source tree. I just want to make sure that I pushed everything that needs to be pushed. Yep, so that's okay. I must have, oh, that's weird. It says 6th of February here in the date. That's what threw me off a bit. And it says 5th of February here. I don't know why the difference. Maybe it's because I'm in incognito mode here and it's not kind of lined up to my time zone or something. Anyway, look at these latest two commits that happened according to GitHub on the 5th of February. You can catch up on what I did in the last stream and then what I did to kind of fix those tests after I broke them during the refactoring. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to get a new font. I've basically already decided on this Sergio Alt, which you can find on the Google Fonts page. But I'm just gonna run through quickly why I decided or how I chose this font. And what I did was I looked at Trello. I looked at the fonts that were actually being used in the actual real version of Trello, and I'm gonna basically use that same font. And now how I found that is I'll just show you how you find out what font our web page is using, and I'll just demonstrate with Google. What will I search for? Search for dog. Okay, so say I want to find out what the font of this this text here is. I can right click on it. Let me just zoom in a bit, just in case you can't see that. So I right click on it, I choose inspect. That's going to open the Visual Studio Dev Tools, and it's going to select the thing that that I right clicked on. So you can see there it says videos, and that corresponds to the videos over here. Now I can look at all the styles for this over here on the right extreme right hand side, and I can find out all the information like font size, you know, margins, paddings, whatever. What I'm interested in here is the font family. Now, if you can't immediately see it, because there is a lot going on here, and sometimes there's a lot more, you can actually type in a filter up here. And so then it just filters all the things with fonts. So it stands out there. Now, I can turn this off. And you can see it makes a little bit of a difference. What you want to do is, while I'm turning it on and off, watch this font here. So when I turn it off, it's defaulting to the system font. You can see how that videos is changing subtly. That's just changing to the system font. Now, if I want to use this exact same font, I can see here that it's Google Sans, and hopefully that's publicly available. I'm just going to select that and copy it. Now I'm gonna search for that in. I'm back in Google Fonts. I'm going to search for that. And there's nothing. So, I mean, maybe that's their private font that they don't release publicly. But if it had showed up, like I searched for Sergio, or did I spell it wrong? Oh no, Sergio. I don't know how you pronounce that. Now, the font that Trello uses is called Sergio UI, which is a TrueType font that you can actually download from Microsoft. I didn't actually find Sergio UI on here, but I found this one called Sergio Alt. I think I'll be happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill down to that. How do I find out information about that? That's not good, is it? I might just try a different font just to see if that one's not available for some reason. Noto Sans, I think. Okay, so this is kind of more like what I was expecting. So this font is actually from Google and not Microsoft, and so I think maybe this Google Fonts page has better support for this font. And I can click up here, download family. Oh, that's not really what I want. I could actually include that font like in the package. I don't even know if that's going to work with the extension though, and the Webview in the extension. So what I'm going to do, if I can remember how to find it, is it about? No. Maybe I'll just try this regular 400. I'll click select this style. Oh, here, this is what I was looking for. So this actually shows you how to include the font in your HTML. And the first thing I want to do is I want to add this link in. So I'm just gonna open a new terminal. Go down to my working directory. I'm going to go down into the React application. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code just on the React application. And before I change the font, actually, I'm going to just get this running standalone. So I'm going to run this in sort of test mode outside of the extension. And to do that, I can just conveniently comment out that data there. Instead, it will use my test data. My test data is coming from a JSON file, which you can see at the top of the file here. I'll zoom in a bit. So my test data is being loaded in from a JSON file, which is basically, you know, a data file format for the Kanban board. Now, I'm going to run this. I think it's npm run start dev. I think I've hopefully used my usual standard for this. You can see that it's running the Webpack dev server. So it's currently kind of running Webpack basically to bundle up all the different parts of the web page. It should come up with my test data in a moment. It always takes a moment to load. While it's doing that, I'm going to actually start to get this together. So in my index.html, in the head, I'm going to pull in my font. I'm not going to save it yet. I don't know what this pre-connecting is all about. I don't know if that's necessary. I'm just going to leave it as the link to the actual font. Oh, if you remember from the last stream, I had an alert in there that says "Hello World" in a constructor that comes up. So we'll just ignore that for the moment. Okay, so this is with the old font. Zoom in a bit, and I'm going to change this over to the new font. So I've included the link. I'm just going to save that. That's not going to activate the font. What I need to do is I need to kind of enable the font in my CSS, and I don't actually have any CSS in here, so let's add the first little bit of CSS, which it gives you the CSS rules here. So I'm back in the Google Fonts webpage now. Underneath where it tells you the link, you've now got to copy the font family out. Let's put that in here. Now I'm gonna see if this works. I'll just put it on the body and just see if that kind of overrides it. Otherwise, if I have to kind of you know, try and override it for individual elements, it's going to be a little bit more tricky, but okay, so I'm going to get rid of that alert because that alert's really annoying. Where was that? And I'll search for it. That will. Okay, there it is. Let's just get rid of that alert. Okay, I'm just going to put up Visual Studio Code like next to the web page there, so I can see what I'm doing here. I'm going back into the CSS file. I think that's worked. Can you tell if that's worked? I'm just going to delete that temporarily and just save it. Now it should auto update. Like that doesn't seem to have made a difference. So let's just see what font is still being used. So I'm going to right click and do inspect element. I'm going to find out what font is being used on this particular element. I mean, it could be a style from React Trello that is overriding the style that I'm trying to put on it. Yeah, so here's my font from the body. You can see that it's been struck out there. That means it's being overridden by something in React Trello. Let's just see if we can find out what that is. Where's the font specified here? It says font family monospace. Where does that come from? That's really weird. It says it comes from the user agent style sheet. I wasn't expecting that. Oh, I guess it's more specific because it's being applied to a text area. Let's just see. I wonder if I can just say star here and say, you know, apply this font to everything. Okay, that seems to have worked. Cool. So I can just double check that. I can explicitly double check that by coming into my, I did an inspect element on plan tasks here, and I'm just going to look for the font family. It's just a bit hard to see, so I'm just going to search for font again. Yeah, so you can see here that it hasn't struck out. So I basically applied the same text to everything. That works for now. I might want to customize that later. And just to show the difference this makes, I'll just put Visual Studio Code and the Kanban board side by side again, and I'm gonna get rid of this again, save it. You'll see it switch back to the monospace font. It's kind of like a coding font. Like, it's good for coding, obviously, but you know, it doesn't look that nice in the Trello board. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Right, I'm going to commit that. Let's commit from the command line. First of all, I'm going to do a git status just to see what's changed. This VS Code API has changed, I know, because I just commented out the alert. In the index file, we have added a link to the font. I'm not sure what's happened in the TSX file. Oh, that is the that is because we're using the test data now. I'm going to undo that in a second. And in the styles, I've added that, obviously, that style to apply that font to everything. And now, if you can't remember what you did, it's always a good idea to do a Git Diff. So you can kind of look through and you can see, oh, yep, I've commented out the alert. That's okay. Yep, here I've added the link. Keep going. This is where I changed over to using the test data, and this is where I added the font family. So it's a good idea just to check what you've done. It's a lot easier to do that in something like SourceTree. So in SourceTree, sorry, I can't zoom in on this, so hopefully you can see it okay. You can select each file in SourceTree, and you can visually see the difference here. For example, here it shows you that the alert line has been removed, and it's been replaced by a line with a commented out alert. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the test data, so I'm just going to discard that directly from within SourceTree. You know, otherwise I'm happy with my code changes. I'm going to add them all, or I'm going to stage them all. I'm going to commit them now. So I selected a new font for the Webview. That's committed, and I'll push that. So if you wanted to go and have a look at the actual repository on GitHub, you would see that change has just gone up there. You can see literally see the thing that I've just added to that, and try it out for yourself if you want to. So let's get on with some refactoring. Now I've got something specific I want to do here, and it's all in the Webview. So I'd actually taken it out of test mode just for the commit. But I'm going to put it back in test mode because all I'm doing now is I'm making changes to the web view. Oh, actually, I do need to, I kind of need to have two sets of code now. So I need to have like a mock Visual Studio Code API that I can run in the browser, and I need the real one that I can run in the extension. Now, as you will have seen from the last stream, if I can just find the code again. Oh, here it is. So in this file, VS Code API, I've created a dependency injectable singleton. Now what I want to do is I want to change the singleton that gets injected into the web UI, depending on whether we're actually running under the extension or whether we're running under the browser in test mode. Now I can do that by first of all, I have to know whether I'm in Visual Studio, and there's a function here that's just always been there called create. But essentially, that's calling a function called try to acquire VS Code API. That's this function here. So basically, where does that come from? I think this acquire this function that it's calling down to here, acquire VS Code API. I think that's part. I think that's injected into the global namespace by Visual Studio Code when it creates the web view. So if this exists, it means we're in Visual Studio Code. If it doesn't exist, it means we're in a regular browser-based application. But I just want to confirm that, so I'm just going to Google that and see if it comes up. So I'm just going into the docs here for Visual Studio Code extensions, and in particular the Webview API. So this is what allows you to kind of like run a little web page or a little web app within a Visual Studio Code extension, within a tab within Visual Studio. So this is the mechanism by how this whole extension works. And what I want to find in here, so it says to access the VS Code API project, let's zoom in a little bit, call acquire VS Code within the web view. So I know that. I'm just wondering if there's any actual kind of API docs for this function. I'm sure there must be some somewhere. I'm just not seeing any in the Google search. But anyway, I would like to come back to that later. But you know, in the interest of time, in running out of time as usual in the live stream, I'm gonna put that on hold and have a look at that later. But I've confirmed anyway. I've confirmed for the moment that this function is the function that I call. I think what I can do is I can just say if that exists. I'm kind of just wondering how I might have to declare this. So I'm just going to declare this, and it's either a function or it's undefined. So here I'm going to say if it's not undefined, I don't quite know if this is going to work yet, but let's see. If it's not undefined, it means I can call it, and it means I can acquire the VS Code API. So I'm just going to put a comment here to remind myself later what this actually means. So if we can acquire the VS Code API, it means we are running under VS Code. Makes sense? So if we can't acquire the VS Code API, it means we are running under the browser in test mode. All good so far. So what I want to do is I'm going to have, this is not going to be in a singleton anymore, right? So this class that's going to basically be a wrapper for the Visual Studio Code API. It's not, like, it can't be a singleton. It can't be the one and only thing that is available. So I've removed that singleton bit of it. I'll move it up here. I'm going to make another version of this. I'll call it mock. Because this is for testing, right? If it wasn't for testing, if the browser was a legitimate use case for this UI, you know, I might call this browser something or other, you know, like, but because the browser implementation for this is really just for testing, I'm going to call it mock. So a mock object is typically one that, you know, you substitute in for a real one for testing. I'll put this alert back just because it's a good quick way to test what's going on. So basically, if we get to this point, we're in VS Code. We should only see this alert if we're in VS Code, and we should only see this alert if we're in the browser. Now, what I want to do is I want to sort of conditionally add these, one or the other of these, to my dependency injection system. Now I'm using CodeCapers Fusion. That's the dependency injection framework. That's an open source project that I built myself. Feel free to use it. It works. It's just for TypeScript. It's not for JavaScript as well. It's just for TypeScript, but it's pretty simple to use. So what I want to do here is, if we're in in this section here, we've determined that we're running under Visual Studio Code. I'm going to new up VS Code API. I'm going to register it as a singleton with the dependency ID that I've got up here. So it's dependency IDs are always a string. I usually by convention set it to the name of the interface that's being injected. But I put it in a const, like a global constant, so that I don't have magic strings all over the place. So I'm going to register it against that ID. So that's it. I've registered a singleton that can be used, that can be dependency injected into any other TypeScript object really easily. But when it happens under Visual Studio Code, it's going to be this instance. And when it happens under the browser in test mode, it's going to be the mock instance. You see how that works? So this is global code, right? This is code that runs when this UI starts up the first time, and does the initial setup. I don't need that commented out code at the end there. So what I want to do now is I'm going to test that this works. So what I'm expecting to see here is I'm going to run this in test mode in the browser first. I'm expecting it to create this object. I'm expecting it to inject that into my app. Now let's just find out. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to search on find all references for the interface, so I can see where it's used here in my the index file for my UI. So you can see here where this is injected. It's automatically injected into my React component. So this is dependency injection for React. I mean, it's not just for React, it's for any TypeScript object, but I use it like pretty much most of the time with my React UIs. Now you can see that the React class, the index class here, has this injectable class decorator on it. That's what basically primes it to be injected. And then this decorator here says that this property here is going to be injected with the object that matches this ID. So we're automatically going to get that provided. Now it's dependency injection that happens automatically after the constructor is called. So anything that's in the constructor here, anything that's in this function here, cannot access the dependency injected object. But we can do it from the component did mount. So this is a React lifecycle function that's called after this component in the UI is rendered, and that's where it's going to do that print message. So what I'm probably going to do now is actually just Alt tab back to the test version of the UI in the browser, and it's going to have that alert come up already. Let's make sure I've saved everything. Where are we? Here it is here. Well, that's interesting. I've just got a blank page, so maybe something's gone wrong. Okay, here we go. Acquire VS Code API is not defined. I thought I set that up. Okay. Where was that? I wonder if I can maybe just access this on the window and see if that kind of does what I want. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure of the right way to do this, but let's just see if this sort of achieves what I want, and I'll find a way to clean it up afterwards. Sometimes it's good not to just get stuck on the details of coding, like just find a way to push through, find a way to work around a problem and push through it, and come back and learn and fix later. Okay, cool, that did it. So we see the alert come up here saying that it's in the browser. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this in the extension itself. So I'm going to kill the development server. And I'm going to come back to my extension that's open in Visual Studio Code. Now I'm going to run this now. If it's sort of set up the way that I've got it set up the way that I hope, running this is it's gonna start my extension. I'm going to open the Kanban board. Then I'm going to see that alert. I have no idea what that alert's going to look like in Visual Studio Code. This will be the first time that I've actually brought up an alert from a Webview in a Visual Studio Code extension. So I'm not 100% sure that that's even going to do anything. You know, maybe they've just stubbed out the alert function so it doesn't do anything. But we're going to find out in just a second. So I'm opening the Kanban board. I should see the alert any second now. And I see no alert. Okay. That's interesting. You can see that I've still got my test data here. That's okay. That's okay. I should see the alert though. Let's go back to the debug console. I don't see anything there. Okay, what I'm going to do, stop that. I'm just gonna change that alert. Where was that? Back to here. Okay, so instead of an alert, I'm just going to do a console dot. Let's make it obvious. I'll do a console dot error. It should show up in red. So I'm going back to the extension. I'm just hitting F5 to restart that. So I'm restarting the extension now, and we're going to have a look and see if I can find this console log. This always takes a moment. I wish I could sort of spend a bit more time on this. I don't really spend much time on this project between live streams, but I kind of wish I could spend a bit more time on this and make this, this development pipeline faster and more streamlined. Like I honestly think that, being able to quickly run your app and do live reload is really, really important for productivity. Okay, so I'm opening the Kanban board. Now, if I switch back to the extension in VS Code, you know what's happening here? Like oh no, that's not right, is it? Okay, one thing I can do here just to see what's happening is I can open the dev tools for the Webview, I think. Let's see. Open Webview developer tools. Okay, cool. So this is where I get my logging. That's funny. I thought. Oh, okay, yeah, I know what's going on here. So if I'd done the console log in the extension code, I would have seen it in that debug console. But because it's actually from the Webview, which is running in a separate process, I need to load up this DevTools here to see the console.log. Or in this case, it's just a console.error that I've output. So, just confirming that everything works as I expected. And now I've got a convenient place to actually sort of diverge this code. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of, ultimately what I want to get rid of is all this interaction stuff. So that's what I'm replacing with this sort of, what I feel is a better structure. Of course it's opinion-based, it's argument-based. The original developer of this code that I'm building on, may well argue that his way was better, but it's much of the same really. But I'm just getting it into a structure that I like working with, and I just want to see the things that I kind of actually need to get out of this. I definitely need this document changed event. I definitely need this send edit thing. I don't need these ones. I don't need this show information get directory info. That was part of the old, that was part of the repo that I'm building on, and I've never used that. So I'm gonna properly implement these in the TypeScript interface here. So we're gonna get rid of this print message. We're gonna have a function called send edit, and it's gonna take a payload. We'll just type that as any at the moment, so we can send anything we want, any message we want, back to from the Webview back to the extension. Now. I'm not sure what this is going to return. It might be like a promise, but let's just assume not for the moment. I can't quite remember what that's going to return. So this is sending an edit to the Kanban board back to the extension. So that when the extension receives that edit, it's then going to update its own in-memory representation and actually serialize that out to the Markdown file. Now I also need a document changed event. Now, there are better and worse ways of doing this. I'm just going to do this the simplest way that I can for the moment to get this up and running. So this is going to allow you to set or pass in an event handler for the document changed event. And what that's going to do is, I mean, it's basically going to be passing in a function, like a callback function. It's going to return void. We'll update this as we go, as we know more about what these types should be. So set an event handler for the document changed event. This notifies the Webview that the current document in VS Code has changed. What happened there? I lost my place. I was trying to correct that spelling error. Okay, so now we're getting errors basically on both of these interfaces because it's saying that we're missing these functions that we've defined here. So I'm going to implement this in both of them. Now later on I'll probably refactor again and separate out these two different classes into their own files. That would be kind of a nicer way to structure this. But in any given session I have limited time, so I really have to pick and choose what I'm actually going to do. So what I want to do in the mock version is kind of like nothing because I might just log it. I'm just going to log that this was called. I'm just going to log the payload. So that way I can see in the browser, in the test version, the edits that it's sending through. And there's nothing much to be done here either. I'm just gonna log that happened. So I can't, the reason why this is mock is because there is no such thing as Visual Studio Code, the Visual Studio Code API just within an ordinary browser. Like it's just not possible. So I provide these versions that effectively do nothing in the browser, and then they're going to do something useful in VS Code. Now let's work out how I do that. By looking at the original code. Is that one the one I want, the factory? So this is the sort of original implementation of posting a message. It's pretty simple. All we need to do is basically post that message on our VS Code API. Now you see the problem here. There is no such thing as this yet. Now this is what's going to come from that function that acquires the VS Code API. I'm just going to remind myself of how that gets in here. Well, that sort of this is the reason I don't like this code. It's a little bit convoluted. It's a little bit hard to navigate and understand what's going on here. That's already got that. Where does this get called from? So I'm basically going to do find all references so I can see where that gets called from. It gets called from here. So you can see how you can use this sort of right click in Visual Studio Code, click either go to definition or find all references. That's a great way to navigate the kind of spider's web of network of code that you're looking at. And great if you don't understand exactly what you're doing. So this VS Code thing comes from here, which comes from calling this. So that's what we looked at the top of this function. Whether that thing exists. Where was that code? Oh no, sorry, it's at the bottom here. So if this function exists, then we call it, and we've already actually extracted it. We've already actually got the VS Code API. We just need to wire that into our VS Code API function here. So I'm going to pass that in through the constructor. I don't know what type this has, or whether I can even type this thing. I'm sure it must have some TypeScript types available somewhere. But like I'm not going to worry about looking for those at the moment. What I need to do is I need to add a constructor that takes the VS Code API, or we're just calling it VS Code. Actually, I'll call it VS Code API all the way through. I'll call it VS Code API there as well. So I'll give that the type any, so it could be anything. I'm going to set that. I'm going to save that as a field within this object. So that field does not exist yet. But I can do this quick fix here and actually declare the property. So you can see it's really nice how Visual Studio Code does this sort of stuff for you. I'm going to make that private. so that nothing outside this class can access that. So I've encapsulated and sort of controlled access to this API. So that's the actual underlying interface to VS Code. This thing here, it's gonna tell me there's a problem here, but it knows what the problem is. This is how smart Visual Studio Code is, right? It cannot find the name. Did you mean this one? So I'm going to quick fix it. Add this. I want to add this to the owner. So you can see that that's added to this. So that is done. There's no asynchronous stuff here, I think, so I don't have to have like any promises or anything like that. Now the other function was this set document changed event. What I'm going to do with this one is really what I've got to do is I've just got to save it. So I'll save it. I'll save the function that's passed in on a property. Now this doesn't handle kind of multiple event handlers being registered, but I'm pretty sure I don't need that. If I do need that, we'll find out later. So this doesn't exist yet, so I can do the quick fix on that. By the way, the quick fix here is also control dot. So if I select this thing that's got the error and hit control dot, it's going to tell me what the fixes are. I want to declare the property, so I'm going to do that. And if you can't see where it is, you can hit F12, go to definition to jump to it. So you can see the cursor just changed to up here. That helps me find that can help you navigate really large files. I'm going to make that private. So that's a property, but the type of it is a function. So functions are first-class citizens in JavaScript and TypeScript. So I'm storing a reference to the function here, and I'm going to call that whenever the extension notifies me that the document has changed. It's actually not just any current document, it's the current markdown document. We're only going to get notified about actual changes to markdown documents. For some reason I can't spell document correctly today. Go figure. Okay, so is this what I want it to be? I think it is. But what I want to do is I want to find out. Oh, here we go. So here's how we can handle a message coming from the extension. Now this is the code that I need to kind of reestablish now. And I am just going to copy that across. I might just instance that after registering the singleton. So this is not something I'm going to bother doing in the browser. I'm only going to do it in the branch of the code where we know we're in VS Code. Any message basically that comes through on the window, that has actually been supplied from the extension. So the extension is like kind of raising these events, as it were. And then I'm looking at a command. I'm not supporting this get directory info anymore. I've never used that. I've never needed it. Now, what this was doing was handling the document changed event and kind of calling this function on the interactor. What I want to do instead is I want to basically invoke that on this singleton instance here. So I'm gonna need a reference to this now. So I'm just gonna copy that and move it above where I'm registering it. Hang on, I just realized I'm in completely the wrong code path here. I need to. This is the code path. This is the code path where we're actually running under Visual Studio Code. So I'm gonna take that event listener and move it up to here. I'm going to take out a reference to this. So this is, oh, here we got a problem. What do I call this thing? I can't call it VS Code API because I've already called that thing VS Code API. Let's do a refactor rename on that. I am just going to change that, for want of a better name, I'm just going to change it to VS Code. I did a refactor rename, by the way, there, which is if you right click, you can do refactor. What didn't it allow me to do that? Oh, sorry, that was the wrong menu. Rename symbol, but I hit. You didn't even see me do that. That's how quick it was. I hit F2 and I typed the new name for it, and it changed it. So I'm going to pull this thing out, and I'm going to call this thing VS Code API. I've instanced that. I'm going to register that as my singleton, and what I'm going to do here is this is where I'm gonna. Oh, I can't actually get to the document changed event because it's private. In fact, I'm not happy with that name. I'm just going to do F2, do a quick refactoring on that to make it be a document changed event. It's private. I'm going to change it to public. Probably not the best design, but it'll do for now considering I'm running out of time. So now I should be able to access that, but only if it's been set. If it's been set, then I'm gonna invoke that. Oh, so we've got to pass through the message here. So that's something that I missed. So it's giving me an error here because this thing doesn't actually take any, I'm going to go to definition. This thing doesn't actually take any parameters, but I'm going to just tell it it's getting a message. I'm not going to worry about typing that yet. Possibly can type that later. And make sure that the signature here is updated as well. In fact, I'm just going to preemptively take this whole type signature and refactor that out to a type, which I'll call capital document changed event equals that. So now I've got a type that I can reuse. So this is a type for a function. And instead of having it copied down here, the same sort of where am I? The same sort of type definition, I can reuse that. Cool. So now I've got I'm going to do something very crazy now, and I know I haven't actually fully wired this up yet. So, but what I'm going to do, and hopefully it'll help, is I'm just going to delete all this interaction stuff. Blammo, it's gone. So that code was still being used. So now what I have to do is I'm sort of forced to find the errors in here and convert over to using these new interfaces and functions. Let's get rid of the import that I don't need. I'm going to use Control-Shift-B to run the build from within Visual Studio Code. I mean, it's going to tell me there's some problems. So, I mean, this is the cool thing, is that you can just delete your old code and TypeScript is going to tell you. So one thing, this print message doesn't exist anymore, but I don't want that anymore. I don't even need that whole component did mount. Let's get rid of that. And this interaction factory thing here is being included. Let's get rid of that. I don't need the interactor at all. I've already got my VS Code API being dependency injected. So I can just go anywhere here where it says interactor in these problems down here. I can just go through and replace that with using the VS Code API, as long as it's not in the constructor. So I can't do it here, right? I can't do it here because I can't access dependency injected properties in a constructor for technical reasons. So I do need my component did mount function back. So this function is called after the React component is mounted or rendered the first time. And dependencies will have been injected at this point. So I'm going to move that event handler down to here. And I'm going to say I want to, instead of setting this directly on this interactor that's gone now, I'm going to set it on my VS Code API. Set document changed event. And basically I can just pass in that whole thing that was being used before. And the way I've structured it, it should be able to work without change. There's some sort of problem here. What's a quick fix to this? Is there one? Infer parameter types. That's weird. It's interesting how it can infer that. I'm just going to keep that as any at the moment. For some reason it doesn't like that. What? Oh, I didn't update the interface. You can see here I've got to use this document changed event here as well, which I had defined down here. Oh, there's another place here where I've got to use that on the mock browser version of that object class. I'm just going to move that because it's used up here. I'm just going to move that type. I like to have types defined kind of before they're used, so you can see the first use is here. That's where I've defined that. Okay, that's all good. With a bit of luck, I don't even need any kind of type on this now. Yeah, cool. Now, because I call this event thing, because I called that message in the other class, I'm just gonna do a refactor rename. So I'm hitting F2. I'm changing this to message. All good. Now the next place here is this interactor. You know, this get directory info. That's the thing that we got rid of. So I'm not going to need that. Do I even need this? I'm just going to do a search in the project for that and see where that's used. Oh, that's a compiled JavaScript file, so that's definitely not needed. In fact, I'm just gonna only include TypeScript files or TSX files. Yeah, so this function, for whatever purpose it used to serve before I got my hands on this project, it doesn't do anything anymore. So let's delete that. There's nothing better than deleting code that isn't used anymore. Okay, so now here, instead of using the interactor to send these messages, I'm just going to use the VS Code API that we've got. It should be all the same because it's got the send edit function. I set it up exactly the same as it was sort of working through the interactor. All looks good. I'm just going to run a quick test, but if something's broken, I probably don't even have time yet now to fix it in this live stream. So I'm going to go back to the extension. I'm going to run the extension to see if this thing works, the changes that I've made to it. So we've refactored this. Arguably, this app is so small, this extension is so small that it doesn't need any refactoring. But, you know, like I'm just kind of showing you, I'm just doing this really to show you how refactoring works. But also, you know, I want this project is like open source. And when I do open source code, I like it to be as good as it possibly can be. So I'm restructuring it to be, you know, have an elegant architecture, to use dependency injection so that when I'm in test mode, it can automatically use that mock version of the API. And when it's under Visual Studio Code, it can automatically use the real version of that API. So I'm just going to do a test. Oh, it's still using the test data, so I can't test it with the test data. But let's jump back into the React app and go back into sort of real mode. I should make this. This is the kind of thing as well that should be turned on by that dependency injection automatically. It should automatically use the test data when you're in the browser, and it should automatically use the real data that's coming from the Visual Studio Code extension when you're running under Visual Studio Code. That's something I will look into in the future. So I'm just running this again. So again, this time hopefully it'll be the real data instead of the test data. Fingers crossed it worked first go. Like it very much it often doesn't work first go. You know, like when you've refactored something, you have to be very careful. Obviously, you want to have automated tests in place to test whether you've broken anything. You often need to do thorough manual and exploratory testing to make sure that you haven't broken anything, because refactoring, footnote, refactoring can be very dangerous. You can put bugs in your code, and even worse, you can put bugs in your code that you don't notice until it gets to your customers. So that's the worst possible situation. It doesn't matter so much on this project. Like I said, it's small, it's easy to test, and I don't have customers yet. It's just me using this at the moment. So something's gone wrong. So we've got oh no, I had to select it. Cool. So seems to have loaded up correctly. Let's see if I can change the name of this. Blah. Yep, so that's working. So, that's only a real basic initial test run. I need to do a lot more testing on that yet. But, and I need to run my automated tests to make sure they still work. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I very carefully went through the code, and I kind of knew what I was doing. I knew why I was changing it. I knew what it was supposed to be. And I'm not gonna change heaps more. Like once I've tested this, once I've got it working, I'm going to commit the code and call it a day, basically, for that bit of refactoring. I might want to do more refactoring, but I'm going to do it in small chunks. I'm going to do a small chunk. I'm going to test it. I'm going to commit it. That's one of the safest ways to do refactoring, or any kind of development, really. It's just small iterations, well-tested iterations. At the end of the day, what you get, the sum total, is like a massive body of working code. You don't want to type in a huge amount of code and then test it all at the end, and there's going to be lots of problems with that. There's going to be lots of errors in there. things you won't even notice till later. So it's all about working incrementally in small chunks. I wanted to do some defensive testing today. I didn't get time to do that, so we're going to put that over till next week. So thank you for watching, and please join me in another week. We're going to do defensive testing. We're actively going to attack our code. We're going to try and cause it to break, and then we're going to write tests to, and we're going to fix those tests to prove that our code can be reliable and gracefully handle unexpected errors. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again in a week.